Muse isn't trying to hide the fact that their third studio album, Absolution, is apocalyptic, and that's not even because that song is literally called Apocalypse Please. However, make no mistake about it, the possible interpretations for the fictional universe that the concept album of Absolution conveys extends beyond a simple lyric saying that this is the end of the world. In fact, the album can be analyzed on the same level as a literary work or film, which would be through the use of the three most vital aspects of an apocalyptic narrative. Its use of an overarching clock, the fear that drives the action, and the narrative's revealed truth. All of these elements can be linked through the lyrical and musical parts of the album, and just by looking at the track list, you can see where the songs attempted to grasp these components, whether it be the clock, the fear, as well as some theological topics. But what makes the narrative even more unique and interesting is how its apocalyptic themes are carried over into other territories surrounding the album, which isn't just limited to the actual music. For instance, the album artwork is a direct reimagining of the Rapture, using the shadows of people in the place of birds to illustrate individuals rising up from the earth. On the ground is a man meant to have been left behind, perfectly addressing many of the album's endeavors into both questioning faith and fears in the light of a massive societal change. You see, Absolution was conceived between 2002 and 2003, which was in the wake of events like 9/11 and the commencement of the Patriot Act, as well as the start of the Iraq War. These events influenced the writing process of Absolution, similar to how the Cold War and Vietnam War were utilized as contemporary commentary in both Watchmen and Apocalypse Now. In order to echo the mass paranoia that ensued in America, Muse crafted an album that expressed the highly varying state of mind from these early 21st century grievances through the form of their own apocalyptic narrative. It's an apocalypse that's fairly ambiguous though, as we're given no concrete idea as to what exactly the catastrophe at hand is. The album art initially suggests something religious related, with the rapture being the obvious connection, and a few songs do cross over into this territory, but a closer look at that picture reveals that the man is curiously holding a gas mask, which is made evident by its shadow, suggesting that there's something more going on here. A look into the album's various music videos further develops upon the apocalyptic concepts, especially with concern to those three main characteristics for a narrative, but it once again provides conflicting perspectives on what exactly this apocalypse is supposed to deal with. For instance, the video for Time Is Running Out suggests that it could also be about a nuclear holocaust. The reason why we can even determine this in the first place is because the video itself is an allusion to the 1964 black comedy Dr. Strangelove, a film that was a complete satire in the wake of a fear of global annihilation, and while the music video doesn't quite develop itself much further beyond that, I think the reference alone is rather significant in the light of an apocalypse. However, the most notable thing about these videos is how it adheres to the attributes found in all apocalyptic narratives. If the title wasn't a big enough clue for you, Time Is Running Out refers to the clock governing the action. Even the general rhythm of the song is meant to mimic a clock ticking down. Here, take a brief listen. In contrast, some of the other videos for songs off the album instead try to illustrate the fear that's prevalent throughout Absolution. Hysteria essentially just centers on a man driven into obsession and insanity over the course of a night, but others are much more elaborate and specific. Stockholm Syndrome situates the band playing for a TV show when something akin to the Rapture occurs, showing people being taken away at random, and what ensues is nothing but mass chaos from everyone who has been left behind. Perhaps the most faithful video in relation to the album art. But by far the most in-depth video is definitely the one for Sing for Absolution, and it contains its own mini-narrative as well. It depicts a futuristic Earth, with the band taking a group of citizens on a rocket to presumably colonize somewhere else. Think of it like the church leaving behind Earth to preserve the memorabilia in a canticle for Leibowitz. However, disaster strikes them while mid-space and forces them to cancel their voyage and head back to Earth, but a collision with an asteroid forces them to come crashing down. Now on the surface, it's revealed that during their time away, an apocalyptic event has occurred, signifying that the planet has now become a wasteland, proven by showing Big Ben destroyed in the distance. It can be speculated that they are now supposed to be the last remaining survivors on the planet, because the final shot of the video implies that the civilians that they were carrying were actually left drifting in space following the collision with the asteroid, ending the video on a darkly ironic note. That's it for the music videos, but Muse also managed to capture their album's motifs in another way: live performances. But first, I think I need to give some brief background information. Remember the use of that clock in Time Is Running Out? Well, that's only the second song in the album, and that clock is assumably ticking down all the way until the closing track, called Ruled by Secrecy. In order to convey this, the band literally puts on a timer on every screen at the current venue, during every live performance of the song. The song itself begins very quiet, with a hushed set of vocals backed by a subtle piano, but when that clock hits zero, the song explodes. An apocalyptic event is implied to have just occurred, and as the instrumentation plays, the band sings of a world where change is in the air, and they'll hide everywhere, but no one knows who's in control. Now that the true catastrophe has occurred, no individual within the narrative's population knows how to properly deal with the new world that the situation has brought about. They've entered the darkness, if you will. However, all of this just further begs the question, what truth is supposedly revealed here? Well, I think that actually lies with the very title of Absolution. It's not necessarily trying to possess a religious connotation, but instead I see the word absolution here as simply a reference to the act of absolving. When keeping in mind the context that it was produced, perhaps the real truth that is revealed over the course of the album is that people only seek personal absolution in the wake of crisis. I'd be willing to bet that more people sought personal absolvement after an event like 9/11 because the fear of death was more prevalent than it ever had been. But those individuals probably wouldn't have begged for forgiveness if a massive tragedy didn't just open their eyes. I understand that I may be making a broad claim here, but I see this as the reason why every music video for the album suggests a different kind of apocalypse from the last. Because at the end of the day, does it really matter what kind of crisis it is? Because whether it be the Congo, Vietnam, or Iraq, they would probably all bring about the same human elements in each of us. If nothing else, Absolution seems to signify the truth that people tend to only bring about their true nature when their immediate situation is under any sort of dire stress, and the consequence for that could be an apocalypse akin to the one displayed in Muse's Absolution, a world where no one knows who's actually in control. But still, we all know that we just don't want to be left behind at the end of it all.